feel the need to return to the topic of free will because the common man doesn't really give a shit about this topic. For them, for the common man, he is free or unfree depending on his personal circumstances. But among philosophical circles, especially within the decaying American empire of lies, there is a resurgence of a denial of free will. Americanism is nihilistic, and I've explained my positions on that in another monologue. Homo Americanus, I believe it was titled, and Americanism. Anybody interested can go back and listen to what I have to say. And I think this is a symptom of decay, of decline, of degeneracy. Because all the people that were born and raised under the American worldview are experiencing this decline of the American empire as an end of the world, which is actual. It's an end of a worldview, not an end to the world itself. But for humans, it is experienced as an end of a world, not an end of the world, I repeat. So for them, everything they thought was certain, that they took for granted, is suddenly put into question, is suddenly exposed to be false, to be a lie. So they begin doubting themselves. They begin realizing that they were living in a lie. So instead of accepting personal accountability and saying that I was in error, and therefore putting into question their intellect, their judgments, their choices, instead they want to universalize it. And they want to say it was all inevitable because nobody has free will. So if anybody studies what they're saying, essentially they want to escape their culpability and what this implies about them personally. Because weakness always seeks escape within collectives. But in this addendum, I want to get into some of the side matters concerning free will. So I'm going to read what I had written a while ago concerning my thoughts on the subject. I titled it Freedom Determined by Power. And I write, an individual man's aggregate powers, his energies, his organic energies, are minuscule when compared to the number of organisms existing across the cosmos, and more significantly when compared to the will-less cosmic forces involved in continuously determining existence, creating a fluctuating dynamic state of constant interactivity, flux. When placed in such humbling context, a man's will seems powerless, ergo without freedom. An organism compensates for this through consistency. Consistency is the nature of being alive. Consistency over time is a force multiplier. The infinitesimal power of an individuated organism increases the probability of producing a positive for its effect through the multiplier of time, persisting across space-time. What I'm saying is I accept that an individual's, since freedom equals power and power equals freedom, because what is power? It is the ability to overcome resistance, and by overcoming resistance your options multiply. You have more options, and this is how I defined free will or freedom. If anybody's interested, I made a monologue on it called Free Will, and here I'm just barely expanding on it and clarifying my positions. So what I'm saying here is I admit that when compared to the cosmos, a human will is insignificant by comparison. And though it has power, it appears like it doesn't have much power. Its power is so small, so tiny that it has no great effect. So an individual experiences this as powerlessness. I continue. Another force multiplier is self-control and understanding. Self-control and understanding make an organism's infinitesimal energies more effective by making them more efficient through persistent focus. So what I'm saying here is a weaker force, an individual with less power, can focus its inferior energies and overpower somebody with more power, but which remains unfocused. Unfocused power is diluted across space-time. So therefore, a focused power, even though smaller in aggregate energies, available energies, may overpower a stronger power. This is evident in the martial arts, where they focus their power. I continue. Another method is collectivization. By including its individual will within a unity of cooperative willfulness, organisms increase their effect. They are empowered. But at what cost? Many philosophic champions of individualism consider the cost too high, even if many of them deny free will altogether, such as Nietzsche and Schopenhauer. A Stoic approach. In effect, they would rather live independently, surrendering themselves to fate, as this is determined and imposed upon them by overpowering cosmic forces. They prefer this than surrendering their will to a collective. So other than my psychological positions, what I'm saying here is an organism compensates for its minuscule power by cooperating. This is another force. So one force multiplier is focus, self-control, based on self-control. And another is collectivization, cooperation. The ideal of God comes from this collectivization of wills. Intersubjectivity abstracted and given anthropomorphic form. That's what God is. The ideal of a singular God is akin to secularized globalism, universalism, in that it proposes and represents a collectivization of cosmic wills, beginning with the multiplicities found on earth. So what I'm saying here is God, from ancient times, represented a collective. For instance, city-states, gods represented, first of all, forces of nature, but they also became representations of city-states. Like city-states adopted a god. Athens had Athena, Sparta had Ares. So the god represented them as a people, as a collective. That's what I'm saying here. In ancient times, divine powers were judged by the quantity of worshippers surrendering their will to them. This is the meaning of sacrificial rites. A worshipper sacrifices animals as representations of his willful self-sacrifice, his willful surrendering of his will to the unknown. A god would become as powerful as the number of followers he or she could gather in his or her name, focusing their wills upon whatever objectives the priestly class deemed the god willed. This was the role of the priests. They spoke on behalf of the divine. In fact, they manipulated the masses. They focused their collective wills upon whatever objectives they considered valuable. This is what God became eventually. It became a representation of the collective, directed by clever minds that spoke on behalf of the divine. A method of mass control, multiplying individual willpower, increasing its freedoms by surrendering them. Ironically, freedom through collectivization demands a submission of individual freedoms to a collective, governed by authority figures. In practice, individuals surrender their infinitesimal freedoms of will to a collective will, identifying and adopting the collective's unified identity as their own. A significant force multiplier. A benefit at a cost. That's what I mean by the sacrifice of individuation to gain this expansion of empowerment, this expansion of your options, right? Your freedoms. Only now they go through the collective. Ironically, freedom through collectivization demands a submission of individual freedoms to a collective governed by authority figures. I said that already. In practice, individuals surrender their freedoms of will to the collective will. I also said that. An individual sacrifices his freedom of will, his willpower, to a collective by immersing his identity within its representational abstraction. Example, God. Or it could be an idea, an ideology. It doesn't have to be God. God was the first abstraction. Later, this abstraction became more abstract, like currently, where we may surrender our will to the idea of freedom itself, like in the United States, liberty. Denial of free will is part of the sacrificial rites of inclusion, evidence of worthiness, i.e., faith. An individual's freedoms, i.e., willpower, are increased but only through the mediating approval of a collective, as represented by the priests or the leaders. An individual rejects his individual needs, desires, and becomes entirely committed in realizing the collective's objectives, as these are presented to him via sanctioned authorities. Individuals entirely committed to this sacrificial process experience this as a form of empowerment, ironically. Their individuated wills are immersed within a collective will, and this collective will is what makes them feel like their powers are expanding. Expanding in the sense that they have more options, but these options, again, go through the collective. That is, they have to be permitted, they have to be approved by the collective, or by the authorities that can direct, can exploit, can manipulate the collective's ideals. Denial of self is an aspect of a necessary self-sacrifice. A man regresses to an infantile state, or the level of a simpler animal, a manimal, that is controlled by external wills and will-less cosmic forces, stoically accepting his faith as the necessary price of admission. Such a man has no identity outside what is permitted by the collective. Such a manimal only has his primal pleasures to give meaning to his existence, because anything other than self-preservation is dependent on collective consent. What I'm saying is, to encapsulate, in order to increase his minuscule power, a man may first focus his energies, or he may choose to sacrifice his independence in order to expand his force, his power, by being included in a collective. So, an individual with a weaker individual with less power may appear to be stronger, may overpower an individual with more energies, more power, by focusing his energies. That's part of like I said, part of the philosophy of the strategy of the martial arts. And the second is by collectivizing himself, including himself within a collective in order to multiply his power. And we see this in Judaism. In Judaism, the one God, the MonoLog, is portrayed as a universal God. That is already we see Messianism at work. They want to include not only one city-state, not only one nation, not only a portion of humanity, but they want to include all of humanity in a collective, thusly making their God the primary God. This is Messianism. Collectivization also creates the illusion of superiority. For instance, by promoting ideals where collectives deny themselves, where tribalism is denied, while practicing tribalism gives you an advantage, right? For instance, by training other people to leave home and their families as soon as possible or suffer shame, while practicing the opposite, by practicing tribalism and nepotism, you offer an advantage to your tribe. Because while the other, even though he might be smarter or more gifted, is occupied by getting laid or making money, you don't have that issue because your tribe is supporting you. Your sexual relief is guaranteed. Your welfare is guaranteed. Your survival is guaranteed by the tribe, by the collective. So that you can focus whatever energies you have upon whatever objective you desire. And this gives you an advantage. So the other person who was raised to believe that it's shameful to be part of a tribe, to be supported by a family, may be struggling to survive, to make ends meet, or may be preoccupied by sexual issues. Your individuals, your tribe, has no such restraints. So you can focus your energies. This is an answer to Finkelstein and explaining why the Jews have are so successful. Because many of them are behind the movements that result in the destruction of tribalism in other peoples and other nations, while they practice the exact opposite of what they preach. And this is why they are resented. It's nothing to do with their success. It's how they gain success. That's the issue. It's underhanded. It's subversive. It's hypocritical. It's feminine. So while in Israel they tolerate the Orthodox Jews and how they treat their women, in Western nations, under the American umbrella, they promote feminism, in essence destroying the family. And they attempt to shame tribalism as passé, as backwards thinking, while at the same time, in their own nation, they tolerate and promote it